For calendar year 2020, 309,000 tourists. And for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021, a paltry 7,300 tourists. The worst performance since ever.
Time is going by. We are still in 2020. I was hoping the minister would tell us something we don't already know. Please tell us about the reasons for this year, Deputy Prime Minister. We're not interested in things we already know. When the lockdown was, what happened, this is already known. There was no point in asking you a question if that was the answer.
Mr. Speaker, the House will surely agree that the question is the leader of the opposition's to frame as he thinks fit. And the answer, Mr. Speaker, under your guidance, is mine, to respond fully and comprehensively to the PNQ put to me, and that is what I propose to do. Now, in Mauritius, I said 2020-2021, 7,300 tourists. I wish to recall, Mr. Speaker, that we saved the population of Mauritius. In the thick of COVID, we saved the population under the guidance of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health through vaccination, thereby creating the possibility of an early and safe reopening of borders. By the time we reopened, in October 2021, 86% of our population had been vaccinated once, 80% twice, and we had started the booster vaccination. Exceptional worldwide. And this is a performance that has been acknowledged and recognized both by the World Health Organization and the World Bank. We have not only saved the population, but we have saved Mauritian tourism. Had government not acted then, the inevitable consequence would have been closure of many hotels and tourism enterprises with massive loss of employment and livelihoods. Government spent, Mr. Speaker, 12.3 billion rupees in terms of wage assistance scheme. And it's relevant because had we not done that, we would not have been speaking of 1.4 million. We would be speaking of 50,000 tourists. 12.3 billion wage assistance scheme to hotels, tourist residences, restaurants, tour operators, and all employers and employees of the tourism sector. Waiver of state land rental and related support measures. Direct support to the hotel industry through the MIC to the tune of some 15 billion rupees. And the self-employed assistance scheme for taxi operators, skippers, and pleasure craft operators, amongst others, 354 million to safeguard livelihoods. When I say we saved Mauritian tourism, of course it's not just government. It's also the hotels, the restaurants, and employers who use this time for refurbishment, retraining, and greening, and strategizing for the relaunch of the sector. And also, let me pay homage to all the employees and independent operators of the tourism sector who, through huge sacrifices for themselves and their families, demonstrated admirable resilience and willingness to support tourism. Now, as from October 2021, we began the slow and complex process of building back and of building back better. Why do I say slow? Because the global recovery has been a very gradual process with twists and turns. Today, we live in a world of uncertainty, and this has affected travelers and the travel industry generally. Why do I say complex? Because of this uncertainty. The world has changed. Collectively, we have experienced the most traumatic psychological upset since World War II. How does this impact on the health of travelers and on the willingness to travel? And why do I say building back better? Because we cannot have more of the same. The risk of future pandemics is real. Disruptions in the global value chains, the capacity of travel, the travel industry to respond. So since October 2021, recovery has been slow and complex. In the fiscal year 2021, we had only 180,000 tourists, 12.8% recovery. In fiscal year 2021-2022, 553,000 tourists, 39% recovery comparing to the corresponding year pre-COVID. That is when, in the course of the budget speech, the Minister of Finance, my colleague and good friend, spoke of the objective of achieving 1.4, nearly, he said nearly 1.4 million tourists, referring to that pre-pandemic figure, and the objective referred to this present fiscal year. For recall, we had achieved 1,383,000 immediately before COVID. So 1.4 million is indeed the target for the present financial year. I have always said two things. Firstly, that it is a very ambitious target. We have never hid the fact that it is a very ambitious target. Ever since June 2022, that is what we had said. It was then very ambitious. Remember, at the moment the Minister of Finance spoke, for fiscal year 2021-2022, we had 553,000 tourists, representing a recovery rate of 39%. It was, on the one hand, very ambitious, it still is, and it will remain a very ambitious target. On the other hand, a target, to my mind, is not an accounting exercise. It is the definition of a common goal to mobilize all the energy, all the resources, all the goodwill of the whole population, of the whole tourism sector, to strive towards the future, confident with a clear perspective of where we're heading. And it was in that spirit that we created the joint working group with the private sector to strategize as to reopening and how we would relaunch tourism. Now, since the last budget speech, what has been the progress we've made? From 553,000 in fiscal year 2021-2022, for calendar year 2022, we achieved more than 997,000 tourists, a recovery rate of 72%, from 39% fiscal year to 72% in the calendar year. And in the first quarter of 2023, we have welcomed more than 305,000 tourists. The recovery rate for this first quarter of 2023 stands at 87%. So for the whole of the fiscal year, we have so far welcomed 926,000 tourists, recovery rate of 84%. Now, when I say 1.4 million is and remains a very ambitious target, why do I say that? Because, first of all, the pace of recovery is uncertain. Who can tell me what will be the course of events in Ukraine? Who can say for certain what will be global inflation in our global and in our main markets? Who can say how this will psychologically impact on tourists? Will the phenomenon of revenge traveling remain a constant for the future, or will it change? This is all uncertain. And the challenges now, and that is why I say recovery is complex, is on the one hand the demand, generating the demand. Over the last 3 months, in our main markets, France, the UK, Réunion, we're at 100% recovery. In Germany, we're at more than 90% recovery. In South Africa has got its own peculiarities, we're at 86% recovery. In India, unfortunately, because India only opened less than a year ago, reopened, we stand at 48% recovery for the last 3 months. China has only just reopened, and we had to wait for the second list of countries for tourist exchanges for Mauritius to appear there. So the first major challenge is that of demand. Consolidating, recovering our position within the main markets, and generating additional demand from the opportunity markets that are India and the Gulf countries, first and foremost. Now, the second major challenge of the demand is connectivity. The Leader of the Opposition will be interested to know that number of airlines serving Mauritius. In 2019, between January and March, we had 22 airlines. This year, first quarter, 18 to 19 airlines. Number of destinations from which tourists can come to Mauritius. In 2019, 31 to 32 destinations or ports of embarkation prior to COVID. Today, between 25 and 26. Number of flights, we had between, let's say, an average of 800 flights prior to COVID. Today, our average would turn around 600, and believe. I have the figures per month. Unfortunately, I do not have the total average for the first quarter. In terms of total seat capacity, very important. In 2019, first quarter, 686,000 seats. And in 2023, 558,000 seats. So there are real constraints and challenges, but our recovery in terms of seat capacity stands at 81%. So we're doing very well as Air Mauritius builds back capacity and we connect with other airlines. Now, one of the major challenges for the Leader of the Opposition to understand is cruise tourism. The cruise ship industry has not recovered. From memory, I think the recovery rate stands around 22 to 23%. And that is, of course, impacting us. And one of the reasons is that the one major operator is no longer operating in our region, and we don't have the cruise ships that we had prior to COVID. But, and I will end on that, I would like to put it to the House that what matters most. Yes, we have this highly ambitious target of 1.4 million, and we will spare no effort to get as close as possible to 1.4 million. But what is most important, and I'm sure the Leader of the Opposition will agree, is tourism earnings. And in terms of tourism earnings, we are doing better than in terms of recovery of actual tourists. The percentage change, 2019 to 2022, in terms of tourist arrivals, we have 28% less tourists. But as regards tourism earnings, we are only at 17% less, which means that we are doing much better in terms of tourism earnings, with a total of nearly $1.5 billion US dollars for 2022. And that is accounted for by a longer period of stay. Tourism stay, on average, has increased, and tourism spend per tourist has increased. So as we move forward, Mr. Speaker, we are mobilizing all the resources that we have at hand, working hand in hand with the public sector to bring about the best possible results for the tourism industry in the present fiscal year.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister has taken, nearly 20 minutes. I hope you'll give me adequate time to ask questions. And I hope he will have the decency to reply short answers and precise answers, because this is what the nation expects from a Deputy Prime Minister. The first thing I'd like to ask the Deputy Prime Minister is this. You're talking about recovery rate. We would have recovered 100% if we were to 1.4 million tourists. We are at 87%. Maldives is at 108% in the first 3 months of this year. Seychelles, you will be shocked to learn, Deputy Prime Minister, is at 132% of recovery, meaning that it has 32% more tourists in the first 3 months of 2023 than it had in 2019. Now, we used to be the market leader by far in the Indian Ocean, and now we are into third place. And my question is, why is Seychelles doing better? Why is Maldives doing much better? And why we are the last horse in a three-course race?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to first point out that neither the Seychelles nor the Maldives closed down for as long as we did during the COVID period. And let me just quote one figure for the House to understand why we chose to close our borders. According to the WHO, total number of COVID cases per 100,000 population. Seychelles, 46,505. Mauritius, 3,161. Deaths per 100,000 population. What can be more important than safeguarding the lives of Mauritians? And that was the choice of our Prime Minister and of government. Deaths per 100,000, Seychelles, 170, Mauritius, 80, less than half percentage-wise. That is first and foremost the very first reason, because we chose to close our borders and protect our population until we achieved a high level of vaccination. Now, the Maldives hardly closed, and they reopened fully in July 2020. Seychelles reopened to tourism after closing a much shorter period than Mauritius in March 2021. We reopened in October 2021. So the answer is very clear, Mr. Speaker. We made the choice, and I believe it was the right choice, to protect our population so that when we reopen our borders, we would do so safely and we would allow tourism to flourish in proper conditions.
Speaker, we opened 18 months ago. And when you quote the figures of the Ministry of Health, we all know they were falsified and erroneous. It can be proven at any time by looking at the deaths in 2022, 2021, compared to the average. It can be proven. I'm sorry about that. Now, I want to quote one. I mean, now it is COVID. In his press conference, he said, en raison du mauvais temps qui a prévalu en février. Now, I looked at the Meteo report for February. It was one of the driest months for the last 30 years. So what is the real reason? En raison du mauvais temps, because COVID 18 months ago, or because simply the ministry is not competent enough to run the tourism industry in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I take, on behalf of government, strong objection. I did not interrupt the leader of the opposition. He speaks of decency, and I would request that he be decent enough to listen, just as I listened to him politely. Mr. Speaker, we take strong objection to the accusation that figures would have been falsified. These figures have been vetted and are being used by the World Health Organization. They have been considered both by the World Bank and the IMF and are being used internationally. There are, within international society, clear procedures for collection of data at national level and compilation at international level that are used by international bodies. Unfortunately, this leader of the opposition and this opposition as a whole have spent the whole COVID period casting doubt at closing and or reopening borders, casting doubt at vaccination, casting out at the whole effort of my colleagues of the Ministry of Health. And that is indeed shameful, Mr. Speaker. Likewise, in terms of public spending to protect the population, to protect the economy, this has been acknowledged worldwide by everybody, save for this opposition. So, Mr. Speaker, the figures speak for themselves. We have one of the best performances in terms of affording protection to our population, and we are very, very proud of that, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, secondly, as regards February. Now, what I said in the course of my press conference was that in the specific case of South Africa, nous avions noté une progression en dents de scie. Une progression, certes, mais de janvier à mars, nous avions fait 96% de récupération au mois de janvier, 84% de taux de récupération sur le marché sud-africain au mois de février. Donc j'ai posé la question, pourquoi? J'ai interrogé mes collègues de la MTPA, j'ai interrogé des spécialistes du domaine, des hôteliers, des opérateurs, et ils m'ont parlé du cyclone Freddy. Le cyclone Freddy, nous le savons tous, qui a eu la plus longue durée dans toute l'histoire des cyclones, qui s'est renforcé, je crois, 6 fois, qui a traversé tout l'océan Indien. Et toute cette période de mauvais temps associée à Freddy a coïncidé avec la Saint-Valentin, et donc nous avons eu des annulations de dernière minute. Et donc c'est pour cela que j'ai fait référence, en ce qui concerne le mois de février, au marché sud-africain et le mauvais temps ayant prévalu.
Speaker, I'm sad that something as important than that, it's as if I'm asking a PNQ to the Minister of Health. It's very disappointing, I must tell you quite frankly. Now, I'm going to come to this weird issue. The Deputy Prime Minister thinks that revenue has in fact increased per tourist compared to 2019. He's forgetting inflation. Not inflation in Mauritius, inflation in the dollar zone, because he quoted dollars. Inflation is in the dollar zone. 2019 to 2022 is nearly 20%. So whatever you are saying is total rubbish. In that, firstly, what we can say for sure.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, please remove that.
Totally wrong. It's totally wrong.
Withdraw that word.
Rubbish I withdraw. Totally wrong. Totally 100%, 1,000% wrong. Because the figures, not only the quantity is less, much less, the recovery rate than our competitors, but also revenue per tourist is less in real terms. And I hope you understand the difference between real terms and nominal terms. It's not the same at all. One iPhone was worth $900 in 2019. It's $1,200 today. The value of the purchasing power goes down. Don't come and tell us things that are completely wrong.
Mr. Speaker, I will not, as the Leader of the Opposition used, say that what he has said is rubbish. I have too much respect for the traditions of parliamentary debate in our House than to use such terms. And may I assure him that I know fully well what impact inflation has and what it means in terms of reality. Now, nonetheless, the figures are the figures. And the Leader of the Opposition, if instead of giggling, he would have the courtesy of listening, I could say that he is 10,000 times, 100,000 times, 1 billion times wrong, likewise. The figures are clear. 2019 to 2022, my point was, the percentage drop in tourism earnings is less than the percentage drop in tourist arrivals. And likewise, in terms of earnings per tourist, we've heard more. So a comparison, and let me say this again. Comparison January to December 2019. We have 28% less tourists. But tourism earnings have been reduced by only 17%, and the earnings per tourist have in fact increased by 16%. And I deliberately expressed the figures in US dollars as opposed to Mauritian rupees.
Deputy Prime Minister doesn't understand that there's inflation in dollar terms also, not just in Mauritian terms. Maybe that is something for you to find out after this PNQ. I want to now come to the budgets, Mr. Speaker. Now, once upon a time, 5-6 years ago, the MTPA was enjoying a budget of maybe 14 million euros. Now, in real terms, this year, it will get, in nominal terms, 8 million euros, but in real terms, counting inflation, which I'm sure the MTPA will tell you all about, it's about 6 million. So the MTPA has half the budget that it used to have, and that is a fact, 1,000% right. That is a fact. Now, where is the money going? Because the money is being spent. The taxpayer is spending the money. It's spending the money, 130 million rupees, coming to 400 million rupees, on Liverpool, probably useless, and 300 million or so or more on film rebate scheme. That is where the money is going instead of going to your ministry for promotion. So I'm trying to help you here. Your ministry has been squeezed completely of funds, half of what it used to get for promotion, and that is the reason why tourism is less. That is the reason, plus the fact the country is so dirty, plus the fact there's hardly any nightlife, plus the fact that during COVID, instead of improving the destination, amenities, hotel renovation, etc., you sat on your hands and did nothing. These are the reasons why today we are stuck in tourism. That is the real reason.
Mr. Speaker, first let me clarify one thing. On this side of the House, we are a team. We operate as a team. So when the leader of the opposition says he's ashamed that he's asked me a question, it's as if a question to the Minister of Health. Well, we are a team. And the language we speak is the same language. It is the language of truth, whether expressed by the Prime Minister, my colleague of Health, my colleague of Finance, or myself. We speak and we act as a team. I know it might be difficult for the opposition, with all its divisions, to understand that, but we act as a team. Now, secondly, I would pray once again that, you know, the leader of the opposition, I understand the president designate of the Labour Party-led alliance, should show some respect and courtesy in the House. It is as if he's the only one who understands economics, who understands inflation, as if nobody else understands that inflation is also expressed in dollar terms. But that is the reality the whole world round. For the Seychelles, for the Maldives, for Réunion, for South Africa, that is the reality. And we can't escape that. Now, as regards the MTPA, let me come back to the point of working as a team. My duty as Minister of Tourism is to ensure that every cent of public money is properly spent. With the MTPA, we are working to ensure that the whole marketing strategy is constantly being updated, is dynamic, as following the trend of each particular market. And the leader of the opposition, I believe, was once a Minister of Tourism. He should understand that. When I speak of opportunity markets, it means a new strategy as regards India, as regards the Gulf states, and in the near future as regards China. Whatever budget the MTPA has, is closely followed by the Ministry of Tourism and by my colleagues of finance. Whenever and wherever there is a need expressed by the MTPA through the Ministry of Tourism for additional funding, we have had no issues, I may assure the Leader of the Opposition. Funding will follow the marketing strategy to guarantee optimal use of public funds in the interests of an effective marketing, tourism marketing.
Time over by 5 minutes. Prime Minister's question time.
B210.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will recall that in his reply to the private notice question from the Leader of the